What's up guys, it's Daz here, but you don't really care, and welcome to the first episode of what is hopefully a new series on this channel where we analyse cutscenes from video games, and later on in the series, when I have an actual functioning recording setup, I can also show off how they're made by going out of bounds and showing off what's going on off camera during the cutscenes. Sounds like a fun idea. So today we're looking at Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube. In total, all of the cutscenes in the game come out to about 16 minutes, so I'll focus on the highlights of the game to save us a little bit of time. So let's begin. Now actually, the first 5 seconds of this cutscene effectively set up the whole premise of the game in 3 quick strokes. The screen starts off black from the logo screen before a red M is slapped into the center and transitions us into an establishing shot of the aeroplane that Mario, Peach and Toadsworth are flying in. The slick sound of the paint followed by the sinister chuckle immediately tell us that there is some evil figure afoot splattering a mess behind the scene. And all of this foreshadows Mario's ultimate jailing and task to clean up the entire island. Pretty efficient storytelling, eh? The plane scene itself isn't all that interesting filmically, nothing particularly creative is apparent as it mostly consists of static shots and pictures. The next scene is at least a little more interesting in that it's a good example in how much effort was put into the sound design of these cutscenes. It begins with 2 establishing shots, which is a pretty common tool filmmakers use to simply tell the audience where the scene takes place. As it does so, the scene becomes quite quiet, giving a sense of relaxation the characters are expecting from the holiday resort. This then works to surprise the audience when the plane suddenly halts unexpectedly. There's also a quick shot added here to add a little comedy with only Peach responding to the event and Toadsworth just being upside down. The comedy in this game is quite subtle and rare, which makes me think it's a little odd that it's there in the first place, but it's there. Anyway, onto the sound design. The next shot is prefaced with a visual wipe and a dramatic tune. These act to directly connect the 2 shots, as the next one is answering Peach's question, whilst the tune tells us something bad is going on. The next moment of the scene isn't too noteworthy, it simply uses techniques like the rule of 3 to position the 3 characters into a good composition and uses an eyeline match, which is where the character looks towards something and then we have the next shot showing what's being looked at. After that though, we see this shot of Shadow Mario standing atop a water pump. The general haziness of this shot acts to show the confusion and lack of clarity being felt by Peach and presumably the player over what is going on and who this figure is. The wide angle of this shot also assists with this, as anything closer would make the figure more definable. By emphasizing the distance between him and the camera, he becomes more mysterious. Meanwhile, having him standing static and high in the frame acts to create a sense of dominance from him, as he has the high ground under control on this moment. The fact that he's unmoving also makes him seem somewhat robotic, which causes intimidation. And then of course, he gets his own musical cue for the player to associate with him, which will reappear later in the game. This musical cue I believe is called a leitmotif, though I'm not a musician guy, so it's kind of my own research. I could be wrong, but I'm throwing it out there anyway. Leitmotif. Moving on, although this is common trivial knowledge at this point, I will point out that during the F.L.U.D. introduction cutscene, there are retro Mario references in the corner of the screen highlighting his previous adventure. Once the intro is done, we also see another wipe being used vertically to connect the moment before and after Mario equips F.L.U.D. on his back, and doing so vertically matches with both the camera movement moving up Mario's body, as well as mimics the general motion of picking up an object to put on your back. And once again, another leitmotif is used to associate with the Pianta guards. Now, the prison and court scene is really interesting filmically, as it wanes more into a more abstract style of storytelling in regards to lighting. For a start, the background retains this grey-black tone, which all foreground elements seem to just fade away into. This really highlights the sense of isolation Mario would be feeling while locked away in the prison. We're then thrust into the courtroom with what's known as a J-cut, which is where the sound of the next scene lingers into the previous scene.
Court is now in session.
In this case, it's the judge's gavel. In this scene, the background is pitch black, so as to draw all focus onto the characters entirely, whilst the lack of camera motion and simple cuts act to make the whole scene just appear in front of you, without smoothness or understanding of where everything is. Quite jarring, which makes sense considering the lack of sense going on with the Pianta's actions at this point. There's that musical cue again. Jumping to Shadow Mario's confrontation, the low angle of this shot acts to emphasize the growth of the statue in front of Mario, whilst the shaky camera extends the rumbling of the movement. Interestingly, this game commonly breaks what is known as the 180-degree rule, which instructs that the camera should not be turned to face the opposite direction between 2 shots, as this is too jarring for the audience to follow. There are examples where this rule can be broken, such as to create a sense of confusion or fear, or linking shots with something like an eyeline match like we saw earlier, This time, this seems to fall under the brand of a confusing moment, so it could be justified, though breaking this rule seems to be a common theme in the game, even when it's not usually expected, which is interesting. Once again, Shadow Mario gets a musical cue, though slightly different to the last one. What I really want to point out is the composition between the shot of him looking at Peach and vice versa. Despite us now seeing Shadow Mario much more close up, he still maintains his sinister dominance as the camera continues to look slightly up at him, whilst in Peach's shot it is directly in line with her. Additionally, Peach is looking far to the left, pretty much as far away from the camera as she can, while Shadow Mario is looking either directly at or just to the side of the camera with his evil red eyes. This further makes him more scary as it's like he's looking more directly at the player. This technique has been used in a lot of horror films featuring particularly scary or creepy characters. Once Mario and Shadow Mario confront each other at Peanut Park, the camera uses a stylistic technique of sliding across the scene horizontally behind each character, making sure to have Mario slide to the right and Shadow Mario to the left. This works to ensure the audience doesn't get confused with direction, as well as keeps up with the classic rule of having the hero move left to right and the villain right to left. I could go on to how this originates from writing and how the Western world reads left to right, but considering this is a game made by a Japanese company who read right to left, I feel it may be irrelevant. So that's all the detail I'm going into today. As for this shot, man, the action really speaks for itself. The camera only assists subtly by using quite a wide shot to show off all that is happening around Shadow Mario and pulls back a little once Mecha Bowser rises. This super low angle of Mario looking up shows the large scale of Mecha Bowser, as does the slow pan up towards him. And the confident jump cut to Shadow Mario's mid shot shows he is still very much in control. And fire makes a nice transition. Once Mecha Bowser has been defeated, all those techniques to make Shadow Mario this sinister being disappear. Next time we see him, he is standing within Mecha Bowser next to Peach, who towers over him. He's also blocked off by the front of Mecha Bowser, making him seem less important to the frame rather than sinisterly watching. His movements are also much less dynamic. While he was previously leaping high and vanishing completely, he now has the smallest hop, which makes him seem far less devastating as he was before. Then comes the appearance of Bowser Jr., which is basically just a classic hero shot, though shot head on. Though there is a nice reaction shot from Mario and Peach where they both blink in reaction to his reveal. And once the conversation has begun, Mario and Peach are framed in a much less belittling manner. Mario, while being looked down on, is still quite close up to the camera, showing he is still quite important to the frame. If we were truly looking from Bowser Jr.'s perspective, Mario would just be a speck, which would make him seem very vulnerable. And Peach herself is placed on the top half of this frame, giving her a pedestal of power over the scene. And later, when we turn behind her back, this is because we're following Bowser Jr.'s face, though this does break the 180-degree rule irregularly, she is much larger in the frame compared to little Bowser Jr. This all contributes to how Bowser Jr. is simply being viewed as a kid now, rather than the massive threat Shadow Mario was. It's a little comical, in that sunshine subtle way, though once Bowser Jr. starts to fly away with Peach again, Mario is shown with a longer shot, bringing back a sense of vulnerability. And at the arena of the final boss, Mario is shot with a camera angle that's in line with his body. He's on even ground again. That is until Bowser is revealed to be a massive entity, looming over Mario. Once defeated, we see all 4 characters fall to the ground, with the background changing and presenting each of them in a different light to reflect them. Bowser falls during the dark stormy clouds, Bowser Jr. falls right at the end of them, Mario gets the blue sky, and Peach floats alongside some white puffy clouds. And back to F.L.U.D. vision. The bottom left corner now features a game over screen. During the celebration scene, we also see the classic trope of having all characters face the camera, even though realistically, this makes no sense at all. Over to Bowser and Jr., they're positioned in the bottom right to keep in line of having the villain's face left, whilst having the background of IL Delfino opposing them in the top left, and when still looking up at Bowser and down at Bowser Jr., fitting to their characters. And the final scene has the main characters staring off at the sunset between them. Quite a trope. As for the breaking hero's neck in a single motion, not so much. Anyway, at this point, I think I've said pretty much all I can on this game's cutscenes. So much for just focusing on the highlights, I guess I just got too into it. Anyway, I hope you learned something new, or at least found this video interesting enough to warrant another episode. As I said, I'd quite like to have this as a new series, as it would be good to have something that I could put up quite consistently. This video is very much going to be a one-off, it's sort of a test video to see how it's doing, plus I'm currently in between videos, so recording has been a nightmare to get around to doing. I'd like to go on as well to do some Hey Pikmin analysis stuff, and general just want to continue the series and stuff, but if you'd like to see this series continue, please let me please let me know. Jeez, please let me down? No, thank you. Please let me know in the comments, just because I want to make a series that people want to see, and if you have any notes for how I could improve it, I'd definitely like to do the breaking the cutscene boundary to see how people are, like, what's Peach doing when it's just looking at Mario? Maybe she's turned into a frog monster, you never know. It'd just be an interesting thing to see, not only how filmically the cutscenes are made, but how technically they have been designed too. I know, for example, Xenoblade Chronicles has some pretty interesting cutscene secrets. But anyway, that's all a thing for the future, and it'll all depend on how well this video is received. If you have any other suggestions of other games you'd like to see me cover, or how these videos should be done, let me know, once again, through the comments, or Twitter, or my email, which I have on my About page, I think. Plus, if you have suggestions for the name of this series, do let me know, because I might just call it the filmmaking behind blah 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 at this point. We'll see. Let me know. Right, I think I will end the video off here. So for now, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I will see you in a bit.